Greetings. I am sheer luck, honeys. Sheer luck for you finding good information on things. It is only sheer luck if you find it. Anyway, but today I'm hoping to help you find even better information types with all that is out there in the world of information to find. Today we will be discussing the pyramid of evidence-based practice information types. Come with me now. Woo! Okay, so this here, I don't need no magnifying glass, just like I got a magnifying glass. Woo! Okay, yeah. All right. This here is a ruler for we're going to measure the evidence. And the different types of evidence that you may find, whether you are doing a literature search, just a wild search in your particular browser of choice, or what have you. At the bottom here, we have reference texts, plain old literature reviews, and opinions, otherwise expert or not. All right, if you were treating me and you pulled out your textbook from 20 years ago, I might have to get up out of your office if you had not already given me the anesthesia. Now, reason being is textbooks are out of date by a year, even if they're hot off the presses, because it takes a while to write them. Plain old literature reviews. I can write a literature review. Would that not make you scared? Yes, that's more when you're just summarizing the information that others have put out there. And opinions, expert and otherwise. There are all kinds of experts, and there are all kinds of definitions of experts. So let's look at this base of the pyramid, which is the widest part of the pyramid. Notice it's wide. That means there's a whole lot of it down here. And notice that it is a foundation, much like your textbook, but it's not up high. So let's talk about this one. This is what I think, or this is what others think, but I'm not looking at it totally critically. And when you're doing care on your patient or on me, make sure you base your care on the best possible evidence available. All right, the next part up is case studies and case reports. You can also find in here something called case series. This is when you have just one case or a few cases that are described. You will find you a lot of case reports in the medical and scientific literature. That being because there's a whole lot of individual folks out there, and there may be some interesting cases out there as well. Now, you will also find that there may not be all that many general type articles on particular issues of healthcare or whatever that aren't more talking about, say, case reports and case studies, because quite so much has already been written on the basics of things. So in your articles, you may find a deluge of case reports and case studies. Also, since they only require one person or a couple folks, they're easier to do. Yes. Well, I wouldn't say easier because no individual patient is necessarily easy. But you haven't had to get together a whole trial, which is what's coming up next. Randomized control trials, cohort studies, those bigger studies with hopefully good controls, more people, which would hopefully give you more diversity. Because down here, you got your case report. And each individual human being is very individual and different. So what works for one particular patient may not necessarily work for me. Now, up here, where you get these here bigger studies, where you get more people, hopefully you are going to be able to find a group that is sort of like you, more generalizable findings from the study of many, many more people. There are different types of studies. Usually one of the fanciest of all is the randomized control trial study. That's where people are put into different groups randomly and then possibly given an intervention. Like, oh, you get candy, you don't. Or You could have a cohort study where you've got one group that is very similar to another group, but one group gets the candy and the other one doesn't. Or you are just observing. Let's say you have two similar groups, but one group, say, had a particular disease and the other group did not. You may just observe what folks are eating, doing, all kinds of things with no particular intervention. Alrighty. So again, there are more people that you can draw from, but still, the findings of whatever, even if it is the world's fanciest of randomized controlled trials with humongous amounts of millions of people in it, does not necessarily mean that the findings of said study prove something. Now, nothing is ever proven. Even me saying nothing is ever proven is not proven. But just remember, think back. The treatments that were available 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, last year, they may not be, in fact, they often are not, the best treatments available today. Things are always being learned, and it's a good thing. And also, aside from new findings, there can be findings that certain things work for certain folks and certain things don't work for other folks. So what you want to do is look across them studies and at the higher levels of evidence. This is where we get into some synthesizing of evidence. Now, since you probably don't have 50 million years to be looking through all the medical literature in the world, it's often good to pull from experts in the particular area. And that's where we find our next level, evidence guidelines. These are synthesis of studies with expert recommendation drawn from the findings. These can come from fancy professional institutions, hospitals, different governments, all kinds of stuff. And what the folks there are supposed to have done is look across this information down here and find what does the preponderance of that suggest to be applied in a particular setting, your hospital, your food service thing. Yes. But now at the tippy top, notice how it's real skinny up here at the tippy top. That means there's less of it, but notice it's gold. What this tippy top thing is, your systematic reviews and your meta-analyses. Now notice I've got one particular type of systematic review called out, which we'll talk about more in just a second, the Cochrane systematic review. Woo! Anyway, I lost my Sherlock Holmesy hats, but that's okay. All right. What these here particular very systematic type things do is they go across, and they are often usually put together by folks who are experts in whatever area they are studying. And they go across the findings from these studies down here, and then they report look at the reports of what's analyzed and look at the data. And they look at this data so critically. And they take that data and they either systematically and or mathematically, because often you will have both in the same thing, and they look for what the preponderance of the evidence suggests. Now notice I'm saying suggested, not proven, but the preponderance thereof. Now up here, when you are looking for this here preponderance of the evidence, you can find systematic reviews and meta-analyses written by whole lots of folks. And as long as they follow specific systematic guidelines for preparation, they can call themselves systematic reviews and meta-analyses. But the gold standard of systematic reviews is from this place in the United Kingdom, well, they're based there, called the Cochrane Collaboration. And what the Cochrane folks do, and why they're so beautiful, is that they don't mind not coming to a particular finding. Now, I know when I have done studies in the past or written articles or thingies, I like to come to a particular conclusion and say, ooh, I was right. Now, said things may not actually get published, but hey, I like to have a particular, yay, mine did this, or I found this. But the Cochrane folks, they have no problem looking across a bunch of studies and saying there wasn't enough good evidence for us to make a sound recommendation. And even when they do find good evidence for making a sound recommendation, they'll usually, in their strongest terms, say, the evidence suggests. So just know it's very exciting. Woohoo! Now, I want to quickly tell you where you can find so much of this information. Tools to use for finding the evidence-based practice information. For them Cochrane systematic reviews, you go to either Google Cochrane collaboration or just go to http://Cochrane, COCHRANE.org, and then you can click on your you can click on your Cochrane reviews from there, and they even have an option there where you can freely browse those reviews. Now, granted, those reviews that you'll be able to see for free are only going to be in the sort of abstract form of them, but they will include their professional recommendations, and quite often that's about all you need sometimes, because the full long Cochrane review, many pages of it, just goes over how they mathematically and systematically went through things. The actual findings, they'll have their author's conclusions on that free availability. For evidence-based guidelines from just about everywhere, you can go to a service from the U.S. federal government called the National Guideline Clearinghouse at http://guideline.gov, and there they put together tons of guidelines from lots of different governmental and professional institutions from all over the world. Now, you cannot say, oh, it's all perfect, or oh, this information, it has been okayed by whatever resource. Know that you have to go at each piece of information, even if it is a systematic review, even if it is a guideline recommended by the American whatever association, or the British whatever association, or the Chinese whatever association, or the worldwide whatever association. Just know you have to measure all evidence for you and your patient. And now, for other layers of evidence, know that you can go to your own library. By the way, your library may have a subscription to the Cochrane systematic reviews so that you can look at them full text. Your professional association, places like the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics and the American Physical Therapy Association, they both offer some great evidence-based practice resources. You can go to the PubMed Medline interface for its clinical queries, and the URL is right long, so you could just go into a search engine and look up PubMed evidence-based or PubMed clinical queries, or just go to this big old long http://www.ncbi.nlm.nih.gov/PUBmed/CLI-NICAL. But again, you could just look it up. And with that, I would like to close our little evidence-based talk. Thank you so much for talking to me.